Admiral Daeho Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the stars. The deep space around him was quiet and empty. His fleet had been patrolling the outer edge of known space for 3 months now. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. The human fleet was small compared to the great armadas of the inner worlds. Only 50 ships, mostly old cruisers and destroyers that the Galactic Council had sold to Earth at cheap prices. The alien races thought humans were too primitive to need better ships. They called Earth a death world and its people barely civilized savages. Daeho did not mind what they thought. He had fought in the Titan Wars when pirates tried to take the outer colonies. He knew what humans could do when they had to fight. But the galaxy was peaceful now, and humans were forgotten in their corner of space. Captain Sora Park walked up to him. She was the captain of the Iron Will, the biggest ship in their small fleet. Her face looked worried. "Admiral, we are getting something strange on the long-range sensors," she said. "It looks like a signal, but it is very weak and broken up." Daeho followed her to the communication station. Lieutenant Yunbai Song was working at the controls, trying to clean up the signal. She was young but very good with languages and codes. "What do you have, Lieutenant?" Daeho asked. "Sir, it is definitely artificial. The signal is encrypted with Galactic Council codes, but old ones." "Emergency codes," Yunbai said. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. "It is coming from the direction of the core worlds, but it is very faint, like it traveled a very long distance." Dr. Wu Jin Lee came over from his station. He was the fleet's expert on alien races and their technology. His face was pale as he looked at the screen. "Admiral, this is not good," he said quietly. "These are the codes they use when entire worlds are in danger? The kind of codes that mean whole civilizations might die." The bridge became very quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing to listen. Daeho felt a cold feeling in his stomach. The core worlds were home to the most advanced races in the galaxy. If they were in trouble, it had to be something very bad. "Can you decode it?" he asked Dion _. She worked for several minutes, sweat on her forehead. Finally, the speakers crackled to life with a voice speaking in the trade language all ships used. "This is Emergency Council Station 7. We are broadcasting on all frequencies to any ships that can hear this message. Our worlds are dying. Something is killing entire star systems. We have lost contact with over 800 worlds in the past 6 months." The voice was not human. It sounded like one of the Valen, a proud race that thought humans were little better than animals. But now the voice was full of fear and desperation. "All our fleets have been destroyed. The Corvan Empire is gone. The Deck Confederation has fallen. We are looking for any Deathworlder species that can help us. Any race that knows how to fight and survive. Please, if you can hear this, we need help." The message repeated 3 more times, then cut to static. The bridge was completely silent. Commander Ji-Hai Choi, the head of tactical operations, was the first to speak. "Sir, did they just ask for Deathworlders? They have always said we were too dangerous and primitive to be part of their wars." Daeho nodded slowly. The irony was not lost on him. For 200 years, the advanced races had kept humans at arm's length. They said Earth was too violent, that humans were too aggressive and unpredictable. Now they were begging for exactly those qualities. "Dr. Lee, what do you know about other Deathworlder species?" Daeho asked. The scientist pulled up files on his tablet. "There are 7 known Deathworlder races in the galaxy, Admiral. But most of them live even further out than we do. The Crush from the Magellanic Clouds, the Stone Bears from the Galactic Rim, the Venom Dancers from the Dead Zone near the core. Where are they now?" Sora asked. Dr. Lee's face became even more pale. "According to the last reports, Admiral, their home systems went dark 4 to 6 months ago. No communications, no ships, nothing." The cold feeling in Daeho's stomach got worse. If the message was true, then every other warrior race in the galaxy was already dead. That left only humans. "Sir," Ji-Hai said quietly, "our entire fleet has 50 ships and maybe 30,000 crew. If something wiped out the Corvan Empire, We are talking about a threat that destroyed millions of ships and trillions of beings. Deho looked around the bridge at his crew. They were good people, but they were not super soldiers. Most had joined the fleet to see the galaxy, not to fight impossible wars. The smart thing would be to run. Take the fleet back to Earth and prepare defenses there, but the message kept playing in his head. 800 dead worlds, entire civilizations gone. And now the survivors were calling for help from the species they had always looked down on. Communications, can you trace where that signal came from? He asked. Yes, sir, Yunbai replied. It came from the Centauri cluster, about 8 days' travel at maximum speed. That is deep in council space, Dr. Lee said. If we go there, we will be very far from any help. Sora stepped closer to the Admiral. Sir, what are you thinking? Deho was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his duty to his crew and to Earth. He thought about the smart thing to do. Then he thought about 800 dead worlds, and the fear in that alien voice. Set course for the Centauri cluster, he said finally. Maximum speed. Sir? Jihai looked shocked. Admiral, we do not even know what we are flying into. No, we do not, Deho agreed. But those people asked for Death Worlders, and we are all they have left. If we do not help them, who will? He turned to face the crew. Send a message to all ships in the fleet. Tell them we are responding to a distress call from the Galactic Council. Tell them it will be dangerous, and anyone who wants to leave can. Take a shuttle back to the nearest human base. And if they all want to leave? Sora asked quietly. Deho smiled grimly. Then we go alone, but I do not think that will happen. These are human sailors, Captain. When someone calls for help, we answer. The next few hours were busy as the fleet prepared for the long journey. As Deho had predicted, not a single crew member chose to leave. When the ships jumped to faster-than-light speed, all 50 vessels went together. None of them knew they were flying toward the greatest threat the galaxy had ever seen. None of them knew they would be facing an enemy that had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than their own. But they went anyway, because that was what humans did. In the empty space behind them, the distress signal continued to broadcast, hoping someone else might hear it. But there was no one left to listen. The Death Worlders of Earth were the galaxy's last hope, whether they knew it or not. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 438 system. What they found there made everyone on the bridge stop breathing for a moment. Where there should have been a thriving star system with 3 inhabited planets, there was only death. The planets were still there, but they looked wrong. Instead of the blue and green colors that meant life, they were gray and brown like old bones. My God, Dr. Wu Jinli whispered. He was looking at the sensor readings with wide eyes. The planets are still there, but there is no life at all. No plants, no animals, no bacteria, nothing. Captain Sora Park felt sick as she looked at the main screen. What happened to all the people? That is what we need to find out, Admiral Deho Kim said. His voice was calm, but Sora could see his hands were tight on the chair arms. Doctor Hanwu Nam, take a team down to the surface. I want to know what did this. Dr. Hyan Wu was the fleet's best scientist for studying dead civilizations. He had learned to read the signs that disasters left behind. He gathered his team and took a shuttle down to what used to be the main city on the first planet. The shuttle landed in what the computers said had been a park in the center of the city, but there was no city anymore. The buildings were still standing, but they were empty shells. All the metal and concrete was there, but everything made from living things was gone. Look at this, said Dr. Hyan Wu, kneeling next to what had been a tree. Only the shape remained, like a shadow burned into the ground. Whatever did this, it took every organic molecule. Wood, leaves, even the roots underground. His team spread out to examine the area. What they found was even more disturbing. In the buildings, they found shapes on the floors where people had been. The shapes were perfect, like someone had drawn around the bodies and then made everything inside disappear. Doctor Nam, called one of his assistants from a nearby building. You need to see this. Inside what had been a hospital, they found the most horrible sight yet. In the emergency room, there were dozens of the human-shaped shadows. The positions told a clear story. People had been running, trying to escape something, but they had not made it. "How long do you think this took?" asked Lieutenant Yun Bai-song, who had come down with the science team to help record what they found. Dr. Hyun Woo was examining scorch marks on the walls. "Based on the patterns, I would say no more than 3 days, maybe less. An entire world consumed in 72 hours. Back on the Iron Will, Dr. Woo Jin was analyzing the readings from orbit. What he found made the situation even worse. "Admiral," he reported, "the planet's mass is wrong. It should weigh more. Whatever consumed all the organic matter, it also took a lot of the soil and rock. Billions of tons of material are just gone." Commander Ji-hai Choi was studying tactical displays. "Sir, we are picking up debris fields where the defense satellites used to be. It looks like the orbital platforms tried to fight something, but they were destroyed very quickly." "Any idea what kind of weapons did this?" Admiral Daeho asked. "That is the strange part, sir. The damage patterns do not match any known weapons. It looks more like the satellites were eaten, consumed from the inside out." The investigation continued for hours. Each team that went down to the surface brought back more disturbing news. The cities were intact but empty. The spaceports showed signs that people had tried to evacuate, but many ships had never made it off the ground. On the second planet, they found something even worse. There were signs of a massive battle. The ground was torn up by explosions and beam weapons. Crashed military vehicles lay everywhere. But like everything else, only the metal and plastic parts remained. "They fought back," Master Sergeant Dong Hyun Ko observed. He was examining the remains of what had been an armored division. "Looks like they threw everything they had at whatever attacked them. Did it work?" asked one of the Marines with him. Dong Hyun looked around at the empty battlefield. "What do you think?" It was on the third planet that they found the first survivor, the shuttle pilot. A young man named Tae-Seung Min had been flying over what used to be the capital city when his sensors picked up a faint energy reading. It was coming from deep underground. And what the map said was the planetary government's emergency bunker. The bunker door was massive and made of the strongest materials the aliens knew how to make, but even it showed signs of damage. Long, deep scratches ran down the metal surface, as if something with huge claws had tried to tear it open. Dr. Hyun Woo and his team had to use cutting tools to get inside. The bunker was dark and quiet except for the hum of emergency power. They followed the energy reading deeper into the complex, through corridors lined with empty rooms. Finally, they found her in the deepest part of the bunker. She was alone in a chamber that had been designed to protect the planet's leaders during an attack. Her name was Kira Velthun, and she had been the Valen ambassador to this world. When the humans first saw her, they almost could not believe it. The Valen were known throughout the galaxy for their pride and their perfect appearance. They thought of themselves as the most advanced and beautiful race in known space. They had always looked down on humans as ugly and primitive, but Kira Velthun was broken. Her elegant features were gaunt from hunger and fear. Her usually perfect hair was tangled and dirty. When she saw the humans, she did not show the usual Valen disgust. Instead, she fell to her knees and began to cry. "Please," she said in the trade language, her voice cracking. "Please tell me you have ships. Tell me you can fight them." Dr. Woo Jin knelt down beside her. His translator had learned many alien languages during his career, but he had never heard such desperation in a Valen voice before. "We are here to help," he said gently. "But first, you need to tell us what happened. What attacked your world?" Kira looked up at him with eyes full of terror. "The Devourers," she whispered. "They came from the dark between the stars. We had never seen anything like them before." She told them the story in broken sentences, sometimes stopping to cry or shake with fear. The attack had come without warning. Strange ships had appeared at the edge of the system, ships that looked like they were made from bone and metal fused together. At first, the Planetary Defense Force had tried to communicate with them, but the strange ships had not answered. Instead, they had begun to move toward the planets, and smaller craft had poured out of them like insects from a hive. Our ships fought them, Kira said. We had the best weapons in the galaxy, the fastest ships, the smartest tactics. But nothing worked. Every time we destroyed one of their ships, 10 more would appear, and they learned from every battle. The worst part was how fast it had happened. The Valen had always prided themselves on their ability to adapt and overcome any challenge, but the Devourers had adapted faster. By the second day, they had learned to counter all our weapons, Kira continued. Our energy shields meant nothing to them. Our kinetic barriers were useless. They began landing on the surface, and then— She could not finish the sentence. Dr. Wu Jin put a gentle hand on her shoulder. The people, he said quietly. They took all the people. Kira nodded, tears streaming down her face. Not just the people, everything that lived. Plants, animals, bacteria, everything. They consumed it all in 3 days and then left. I only survived because I was in the deepest bunker on the planet and they missed it. Dr. Haiyan Wu asked the question they were all thinking. How many worlds have they attacked? I do not know for certain, Kira replied. But before the communications went dark, we had reports of similar attacks on 847 star systems. The Corvan Empire, the Thek Confederation, the Rings of Altair, all gone. The humans looked at each other in shock. 800 worlds. Trillions of lives. What about the other Death Worlder races? Dr. Wu Jin asked. The Kresh? The Stone Bears? Kira's face became even more pale. Their home systems were among the first to fall. We sent messages asking for help, but there was no answer. You humans are the only Death Worlders left. When the shuttle returned to the fleet, Admiral Deho called all his ship captains for an emergency meeting. Kira came with them, still shaking but determined to help however she could. The meeting room on the Iron Will was quiet as the humans listened to her story again. When she finished, Captain Sora was the first to speak. Sir, we are 50 ships against something that destroyed the greatest military powers in the galaxy. What can we possibly do? Admiral Deho looked around the table at his officers. They were scared, he could see it in their faces. But they were still here, still ready to fight. I do not know, he said honestly. But I know what we cannot do. We cannot run away and leave the galaxy to die. If we are the last hope, then we are. The last hope. Commander Jihai leaned forward. Admiral, we need more information. We need to know what these Devourers actually are and how they fight. Agreed, Deho said. He turned to Kira. Ambassador, are there any other survivors? Anyone who might have more information? Kira thought for a moment. There might be. The Centauri station was designed to be the last refuge if everything else fell. If anyone made it out, they would go there. Then that is where we go next, Admiral Deho decided. But first, we learn everything we can from this system. I want to know how these Devourers fight, how they move, how they think. Knowledge is the only weapon we have right now. The human fleet moved carefully toward the Kepler 442 system, where Centauri Station was supposed to be. Admiral Deho had split his ships into 3 groups, hoping that if they met the enemy, some might survive to warn Earth. Captain Sora Park was commanding the lead group when her sensors operator called out a warning. Captain, I am reading multiple contacts ahead. They are not broadcasting any identification signals. Sora felt her heart start beating faster. How many contacts, Ensign Jeho? 12 ships, Captain, but they look strange. The computer cannot identify their design. On the main screen, the unknown ships appeared as dark shapes against the stars. They were unlike anything in the human databases. The ships seemed to be made of metal and something that looked organic, like bone or chitin. They moved in perfect formation, but there was something wrong about the way they flew. They are moving too smoothly, observed Commander Yuna Shen, who led the fighter squadrons. No ship flies that perfectly unless it is controlled by a computer. Dr. Wu Jin studied the readings from his station. Captain, I am not detecting any life signs from those ships. No heat signatures from crew areas, no communications between vessels. It is like they are empty. But the ships were not empty. As the human fleet got closer, the unknown vessels suddenly changed course and accelerated toward them at impossible speeds. Battle stations, Sora shouted. All ships, prepare for combat. The first exchange of fire lasted only minutes, but it taught the humans everything they needed to know about their enemy. The Devourer ships absorbed the humans' energy weapons like they were nothing. Kinetic rounds bounced off their hulls without doing damage, but the worst part was how the enemy fought back. Their weapons were unlike anything the humans had seen before. Beams of dark energy that seemed to eat through ship hulls and smaller craft that attached themselves to human ships and began consuming them from the outside. "Captain," called the damage control officer, "the enemy craft on our hull are doing something to the outer plating. It is like they are dissolving the metal," so Ra made a quick decision. "All ships, full reverse, get us out of range." The human ships pulled back, but not before losing 2 destroyers to the strange enemy weapons. The Devourer ships did not pursue. Instead, they stopped and seemed to analyze what had just happened. "Did you see that?" asked tactical analyst Sang Ho. "Limb over the cum system. They stopped fighting to study our tactics." Back on the flagship, Admiral Deho was reviewing the battle recordings with his senior staff. What he saw made him realize how much trouble they were in. "Look at this," said Dr. Wu Jin, pointing to a section of the recording. "In the first minute of the fight, our energy weapons were doing some damage. But by the 3rd minute, they were completely ineffective." General Byung-ho Yoon, who commanded the fleet's ground forces, shook his head in disbelief. "They adapted. That quickly, in real time?" "It gets worse," Chief Engineer Kyung-mi Roo added. She had been analyzing the sensor data. "Their hull composition actually changed during the battle. They literally evolved new armor to protect against our weapons." "Commander?" Jihai was studying the tactical data. "Sir, if they can adapt this fast, how did any of the other races fight them at all?" The answer came from Kira Velthun, who had been quietly listening from the corner of the room. "We did not," she said simply. "Once they learned our weapons and tactics, the battles became massacres. This is why your small fleet lasted longer against them than our greatest armadas." "What do you mean?" Admiral Deho asked. "The Corvan Empire had perfect battle plans. Every ship knew exactly what to do in any situation. Their tactics were flawless and predictable." Kira's voice was bitter. "The Devourers learned their entire military doctrine in one battle and then countered everything." Dr. Wu Jin was examining more of the sensor data. "Admiral, I think I found something important. The adaptation process is not instant. It takes time." Everyone gathered around his console as he explained what he had discovered. "Look at the timeline," he said, pointing to the data. "When we first fired our plasma cannons, it took 47 minutes before their shields became completely immune. The same pattern appears with our kinetic weapons and our energy missiles." 47 minutes? Admiral Deho repeated thoughtfully. "That is specific." "Very specific," Dr. Wu Jin agreed. "It suggests that their adaptation process has limitations. They need time to analyze a threat and develop countermeasures." Tactical analyst Sang Ho was already working on the implications. "Sir, if we could change our tactics every 40 minutes, we might be able to stay ahead of their adaptation. But that would require us to have dozens of completely different weapon systems and battle plans," General Byung-ho pointed out. "No military force operates that way." Commander Jihai smiled grimly. "No alien military force operates that way. But humans might." She was right, and everyone in the room knew it. Human military history was full of improvisation, sudden changes in tactics and weapons that made no logical sense but worked anyway. "The problem is," said Chief Engineer Kyung-mi, "we do not have dozens of different weapon systems. We have what we brought from Earth." "Then we make new ones," Admiral Deho decided. "How long would it take to modify our existing weapons to work in completely different ways?" Kyung-mi thought for a moment. "If we strip parts from damaged ships and use them to rebuild other weapons, maybe 3 days for the first modifications." But Admiral, these would not be reliable weapons. They would be experimental at best. Good, the Admiral said, surprising everyone. Unreliable weapons are harder to adapt to. Over the next several hours, the fleet worked frantically to prepare for another encounter with the Devourers. Engineering. Teams stripped parts from the destroyed ships and used them to create hybrid weapons that combined different technologies in ways that violated every rule of sensible military design. Dr. Seok-Jin Han, the fleet's weapons specialist, was particularly creative. He took plasma cannons and modified them to fire kinetic rounds coated in antimatter. He combined energy missile guidance systems with chemical explosive warheads. He even created weapons that would randomly switch between different types of ammunition. These are the most ridiculous weapons I have ever seen, he told Chief Engineer Kyung-mi as they tested the modifications. Half of them might explode when we try to fire them. Perfect, she replied. If we do not know what they will do, the enemy cannot predict it either. While the engineers worked, the military commanders developed new tactics that were deliberately chaotic. Instead of the careful, coordinated attacks that human forces usually used, they planned battles that would change every few minutes with no logical pattern. Colonel Insu Jang, who led the Special Operations Forces, suggested the most radical idea of all. What if we do not try to win the space battle? He asked during a planning session. What if we use it as a distraction while small teams board their ships? Board their ships? General Byung-ho looked shocked. Colonel, those are not ships with crews. They are thing else. Exactly, Insu replied. They are designed to fight ship-to-ship battles. But humans evolved fighting hand-to-hand on a world that tried to kill us every day. Maybe close-quarters combat is something they have not learned to counter yet. It was a desperate plan, but desperate was all they had. Admiral Daeho approved the boarding. Strategy is part of their overall chaotic approach to the next battle. The opportunity came sooner than expected. The fleet's long-range sensors detected another group of Devourer ships approaching the system. This time there were only 8 vessels, but they were larger than the ones the humans had fought before. All ships assume random attack pattern Delta, Admiral Daeho ordered. Remember, change tactics every 30 minutes whether they are working or not. The second battle was unlike anything that had ever happened in space warfare. The human ships attacked from unpredictable angles, using weapons that functioned differently each time they fired. Some of the modified weapons did explode when used, but even that became part of the chaos. The Devourers tried to adapt, but just as their defenses began to work against one type of attack, the humans would switch to something completely different. Energy weapons became kinetic weapons. Kinetic weapons became missiles. Missiles became boarding pods full of armed Marines. For the first time since their war against the galaxy had begun, the Devourers were confused. Colonel Insu led the first boarding action himself, taking 20 Marines onto a Devourer ship through a breach created by one of Dr. Seok-Jin's exploding plasma cannons. What they found inside was beyond anything they had imagined. The ship was alive. Not in the way that organic creatures were alive, but in a way that was somehow worse. The corridors pulsed like blood vessels. The walls felt warm and seemed to react to the presence of the Marines. "This is not a ship," whispered Master Sergeant Dong Hyan Ko as they moved through the strange passages. "This is some kind of creature. But, alive or not, it could be killed." The human Marines had trained for fighting in environments that would kill most other species. They used weapons designed for close combat in the toxic swamps and radiation zones of Earth, inside the cramped, hostile interior of the Devourer ship. They were in their element. The ship's defenses were designed to counter energy weapons and missile attacks. The remains of Centauri Station floated in space like the skeleton of some massive creature. What had once been the greatest space city in the galaxy was now just twisted metal and empty corridors. But deep in its core, the human sensors detected something impossible. Life signs. Admiral Daeho ordered a careful approach. Captain Sora took a small team to investigate while the rest of the fleet stayed at a safe distance. ready to fight or run if the Devourers returned inside the stations. Emergency Command Center, they found nearly 200 survivors from dozens of different alien races. They had been living on emergency rations and recycled air for weeks, waiting for rescue that they thought would never come. The survivors told a story that made the humans realize just how big the threat really was. The Devourers had not just been attacking random worlds. They had been following a pattern, systematically destroying the galaxy's military and industrial centers first, then moving on to the civilian populations. They are not just killing, explained Commander Velkin Thomases, a Corvan military officer who had escaped when his home fleet was destroyed. They are harvesting. Every organic molecule, every piece of biological matter, it all gets consumed and processed into more of their kind. Dr. Wu Jin studied the tactical reports the survivors had managed to save. How many ships do they have now? When my fleet engaged them 3 weeks ago, we counted over 50,000 Devourer vessels, Velkin replied. But that number grows after every world they consume. They turn the biomass into new ships, new weapons, new soldiers. The numbers were staggering. The human fleet had 50 ships. The enemy had 50,000 and they were growing stronger. Every day, but Admiral Deho had been thinking about their recent victory, and he had an idea. We cannot fight them ship to ship, he told his senior officers during an emergency meeting, but we do not have to. We just have to survive long enough to hurt them. What do you mean, sir? Asked General Byung-ho. I mean, we stop trying to fight like a traditional fleet, Deho explained. From now on, we fight like humans have always fought, like predators from a death world. Over the next few days, Admiral Deho completely changed how the human fleet operated. Instead of moving as one large group, the ships spread out across multiple star systems. They would strike at small Devourer groups, hit them hard and fast, then disappear before reinforcements could arrive. Colonel Insu Jang became the expert in what they started calling chaos tactics. His special forces teams would board Devourer ships not to capture them, but to plant explosives and cause as much damage as possible before escaping. The key is unpredictability, he explained to his Marines. Every attack has to be different. Every weapon has to work in a way they have not seen before. We cannot give them time to adapt. Dr. Seok Jin Han embraced this philosophy completely. He began creating weapons that were deliberately unreliable and unpredictable. Missiles that would change their target randomly. Energy weapons that fired at different frequencies each time. Kinetic rounds that would split into smaller projectiles at random intervals. These weapons violate every principle of good engineering, he told Chief Engineer Kyung-mi as they tested a particularly dangerous creation. They are inefficient, unpredictable, and some of them are more dangerous to us than to the enemy. Which is exactly why they work, she replied, watching as a test projectile split into 17 different pieces that each flew in a different direction. The Devourers expect weapons to behave logically. These do not. Commander Yuna Shin adapted the same principles to fighter combat. Her pilots began flying in patterns that made no tactical sense, using maneuvers that would normally be considered mistakes. They would attack the strongest enemy ships instead of the weakest ones. They would retreat when they were winning and press attacks when they were losing. It feels wrong, complained one of her pilots after a training exercise. Everything we learned at the academy says this is how you get killed in combat. Everything you learned at the academy is based on fighting other humans, Yuna replied. The Devourers have learned those same lessons. That is why we have to forget them. The new tactics worked better than anyone had expected. Over the next month, the human fleet fought 17 separate engagements with Devourer forces. They lost 8 ships and nearly 1,000 crew members. But they also destroyed over 200 enemy vessels. More importantly, they were learning how to hurt the Devourers in ways that could not be easily countered. The breakthrough came during the Battle of Kepler 186b, when Colonel Insu discovered something crucial about how Devourer ships were constructed. His boarding team had penetrated deep into one of the largest enemy vessels, A ship the size of a city that served as a command node for an entire Devourer fleet. The interior was the same living nightmare they had seen before, corridors that pulsed like veins, walls that felt warm and seemed to watch them, but this ship was different. Deep in its core, Insu found something that looked like a brain. It was a massive organic computer made from neural tissue harvested from thousands of different species. This was what controlled the ship and allowed it to adapt so quickly to new threats. If we can destroy this, he told his team over the com, the whole ship should shut down. But the brain was heavily protected. Energy weapons could not penetrate the shielding around it. Explosives were absorbed by the organic material before they could do damage. That was when Master Sergeant Dong Haiyan Ko had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. Sir, what if we do not try to destroy it? He suggested. What if we try to confuse it instead? He had brought along a device that Dr. Seok Jin had created for a completely different purpose. A neural disruptor designed to interfere with electronic communications. It was meant to jam Devourer control signals, but Dong Haiyan wondered what would happen if they used it on the organic brain itself. Sergeant, that could kill us all, Insu warned. We have no idea what that thing will do if we disrupt its thought processes. Sir, we are in the middle of a ship that wants to eat us, Dong Haiyan replied. We are probably dead anyway. Insu made the decision that defined the rest of the war. Do it. When the neural disruptor activated, the effect was immediate and terrifying. The ship began to convulse like a wounded animal. The corridors twisted and changed shape. The lights flickered between colors that human eyes were not meant to see, but most importantly, the ship stopped adapting to the attacks from the human fleet outside. Its defenses became confused and contradictory. Some sections of the hull became immune to energy weapons, while other sections became vulnerable to attacks. That should not have worked at all. Captain Sora, commanding the attack from outside, realized what was happening and immediately ordered a full assault. The human ships threw everything they had at the massive Devourer vessel, using every weapon type in rapid succession to take advantage of its confused state. The ship died in a way that was horrible to watch. It seemed to collapse in on itself, the organic components liquefying while the mechanical parts simply stopped working. When it was over, the other Devourer ships in the system retreated in what could only be described as panic. We did more than destroy one of their ships, Doctor Wu Jin observed as they analyzed the battle data. We gave them something they have never experienced before, fear, but the humans were learning something else as well. Each battle was teaching them more about their enemy, and what they learned was deeply disturbing. The Devourers are not just a hostile alien race, Dr. Wu Jin reported to Admiral Deho after weeks of analysis. They are something much worse. They are a galactic reset mechanism. He showed the Admiral data they had recovered from destroyed Devourer ships. Hidden in the organic computers were records going back millions of years. The same pattern repeated over and over. Civilizations would rise, become advanced, and then the Devourers would appear to consume everything and start the cycle again. They have done this before, Dr. Wu Jin continued, many times. Every few million years, they wake up and clean the galaxy of advanced life, then go dormant again until new civilizations evolve. But why? Admiral Deho asked. I think they were created by an ancient civilization as some kind of safeguard, Dr. Wu Jin explained. A way to prevent any one species from becoming too powerful or spreading too far. The implications were staggering. The current galactic civilization was not the first, or even the second. There had been dozens of advanced societies that had risen and fallen, all consumed by the same enemy that humanity now faced. There is something else, Admiral, Dr. Wu Jin said quietly. According to these records, the Devourers have never encountered a species like humans before. Every other civilization they fought was highly advanced and organized. They followed logical patterns and used predictable tactics. But humans are death-worlders, Admiral Deho said, beginning to understand. Exactly, we evolved in chaos. We learned to survive by being unpredictable and adapting faster than our environment could kill us. The Devourer's programming was never designed to handle a species that thrives on uncertainty. This revelation changed everything. The human fleet was not just fighting for survival, they were fighting to break a cycle that had been repeating. For millions of years, Admiral Deho called together all the surviving representative. 3 months of hit-and-run warfare had changed everything. The human fleet had grown from 50 ships to over 300 as more survivors joined their cause. Ships from dozens of different alien races now flew under Admiral Deho's command, all of them learning the chaotic fighting style that seemed to be the only thing that worked against the Devourers, but the enemy had been learning too. The latest Devourer ships were harder to surprise, and their adaptation time was getting faster. What had once taken 47 minutes now happened in 30, then 20, then 15 minutes. They are evolving to counter our evolution, Doctor, Wu Jin reported during a strategy meeting. Each time we develop new tactics, they become better at adapting to rapid changes. Admiral Myung-sha had arrived 2 weeks earlier with reinforcements from the outer colonies. 50 human ships and crews who had been defending the frontier worlds. She brought disturbing news from the Rim territories. The Devourers have started attacking human space, she reported. 3 colonies have gone dark in the past month. They are not just harvesting the inner worlds anymore. They want to eliminate us specifically. Dr. Tae-young Park, the fleet's expert on alien psychology, had been studying captured Devourer data for weeks. His findings were deeply troubling. Admiral, I believe the Devourers now see humanity as a direct threat to their primary function, he explained. Their programming is designed to eliminate advanced civilizations, but we represent something they were never designed to handle, a species that becomes more dangerous when faced with extinction. The proof of this came from intercepted Devourer communications. The organic computers that controlled their fleets had begun referring to humans with a designation that roughly translated to impossible species, or error life. They cannot categorize us, Dr. Tae-young continued. According to their programming, life from death worlds should not be able to develop space travel. We break their fundamental assumptions about how evolution works. But breaking their assumptions was not enough to win the war. The Devourers still outnumbered the Allied fleet by hundreds to 1, and they were adapting faster with each engagement. The breakthrough came when Captain Jin-ho Kwan, commanding the deep scout ship Silent Runner, discovered something that changed everything they thought they knew about their enemy. Jun-ho had been leading reconnaissance missions into Devourer-controlled space, mapping their fleet movements and looking for weaknesses. His ship was small and fast, equipped with the best stealth technology the humans could build. On what should have been a routine scouting mission, Jun-ho's sensors detected something massive near the galactic core. At first he thought it was a star, but the readings were all wrong. Captain, reported his sensor operator, whatever that is, it is artificial, and it is huge. Larger than anything we have ever seen. Jun-ho made the decision to investigate, despite the enormous risk. What he found defied comprehension. At the heart of the galaxy, where the ancient supermassive black hole should have been the only major object, there was a structure. It was so large that entire solar systems could have fit inside it. It looked like a combination of technology and organic growth, as if someone had built a machine and then let it evolve for millions of years. My God, whispered Jun-ho as his ship's computers tried to process what they were seeing. This is where they come from. The structure was clearly the source of all Devourer activity. Massive ships were being grown in chambers the size of moons. Harvested biomass from consumed worlds was being processed and converted into new vessels. New weapons, new soldiers, but most disturbing of all, Jun-ho's long-range sensors detected something that made him realize the true scope of what they were fighting. The structure was not just producing Devourers for the current cycle. It was preparing for the next one and the one after that. There are millions of ships in storage, he reported back to Admiral Deho. Entire fleets that have not been activated yet. This is not just about stopping the current attack. If we do not destroy this thing, it will wake up again in a few million years and start over. The data Junho brought back revealed the Devourers' ultimate weakness. They were completely dependent on the central structure. Every ship, every adaptation, every strategic decision was coordinated from the galactic core. It is like a hive mind, Dr. Wu Jin observed as they studied the intelligence reports. Cut off the head, and the entire body dies. But destroying something the size of a solar system presented problems that no military force had ever faced before. The structure was protected by thousands of Devourer ships, energy shields that could deflect entire planetary bombardments, and weapons that could destroy fleets from light years away. We would need to get a strike team inside, Admiral Deho said, studying the tactical displays. But even if we could penetrate their defenses, what could possibly destroy something that massive? The answer came from an unexpected source, Dr. Jae-min Yu. A young scientist who had been studying the Devourer technology they had captured made a discovery that gave them hope. Admiral, the structure is not just a factory, he reported. It is also a computer, the largest organic computer ever created. And like any computer, it can be hacked. His analysis showed that the central structures controlling intelligence was based on neural networks harvested from billions of different species over millions of years. It was incredibly powerful, but it was also incredibly complex. The complexity is its weakness, Dr. Jae-min explained. It has to process information from millions of different sources simultaneously. If we could introduce the right kind of chaos into its systems, we could crash it, Admiral Deho finished. Like we did with that command ship, but on a galactic scale. The plan that emerged was desperate even by human standards. A small fleet would have to fight its way through the entire Devourer armada to reach the central structure. Then, a strike team would have to penetrate the most heavily defended installation in the galaxy and somehow introduce a chaos virus into a computer the size of a moon. The odds of success are essentially zero, Admiral Mi Young pointed out during the planning session. Good, replied Admiral Deho. If the odds were reasonable, the Devourers might be able to calculate a defense. Preparations for the final assault took 2 weeks. Every ship in the Allied fleet was modified with the most chaotic weapons and unpredictable systems the human engineers could create. Conventional military logic was thrown out completely in favor of tactics that made no sense to any rational observer. Captain Jun Ho volunteered to lead the strike team that would penetrate the central structure. His ship was equipped with a virus that Dr. Jae-min had designed, a piece of code that would introduce human-style randomness into the Devourer computer networks. The virus is based on human neural patterns, Dr. Jae-min explained as they loaded it into the silent runners. Computers. It thinks the way humans think, chaotically, unpredictably, with sudden jumps in logic that make no sense to a rational mind. Will it work? Junho asked. I have no idea, Dr. Jae-min admitted. That is the point. If I knew it would work, then the Devourers could figure it out too. The journey to the galactic core took 5 days at maximum speed. As they traveled, the Allied fleet grew to over 500 ships as more survivors joined them. Species that had been enemies for centuries worked together, united by the knowledge that this was their last chance. When they finally arrived at the edge of Devourer space, what they saw was worse than their worst fears. The enemy had been preparing. For them, thousands of ships waited in perfect formation, their organic hulls gleaming in the light of the galactic core. They know we are coming, observed Commander Ji-hai as she studied the enemy positions. Of course they do, Admiral Deho replied. They have been analyzing our tactics for months. They probably have counters prepared for everything we might try. Then how do we win? Asked Captain So-Ra. Admiral Deho smiled grimly. We do something they cannot possibly expect. We tell them exactly what we are going to do, and then we do it anyway. The final phase of the war was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ultimate test of order versus chaos, logic versus madness, perfect adaptation versus human unpredictability. As the Allied fleet prepared for the assault that would determine the fate of all life in the galaxy. One thing was certain: whatever happened next would either save the galaxy or destroy it completely. There would be no middle ground in the battle at the heart of darkness. The last message Admiral Deho sent before the battle began was broadcast on all frequencies, in every language known to the allied species. It was simple, direct, and completely honest about what they were about to attempt. This is Admiral Deho Kim of the Human Deep Space Fleet, commanding the Allied Liberation Force. We are going to attack the Devour Central Command at the Galactic Core. We are going to penetrate their defenses, destroy their control systems, and end their cycle of destruction forever. We know this message will be intercepted. We know they will prepare for us. We are attacking anyway, because that is what Deathworlders do when the galaxy needs saving. The response from the Devourer fleet was immediate. Thousands of ships began moving to intercept them. But for the first time since the war began, the Allied fleet did not try to avoid the Battle of the Galactic Core began with the largest space engagement in the history of the galaxy. 500 Allied ships faced off against over 10,000 Devourer vessels in the space around the massive central structure. Fleet Admiral Hei One-song, who had taken overall command of the United Species Fleet, watched from the bridge of the flagship Defiance as the enemy armada moved to surround them. The Devourers were using perfect tactical formations, their ships positioned with mathematical precision to maximize their firepower while minimizing their losses. They are fighting exactly like we expected them to, she observed to General Duhain. Bray, who was coordinating the multi-species ground assault teams, perfect logic, perfect efficiency, perfect predictability. Which means they have no idea what we are really planning. Duhain replied with a grim smile. The Allied fleet's attack was deliberately chaotic from the very beginning. Human ships used weapons that fired randomly in multiple directions. Alien vessels employed tactics that violated every principle of space combat they had ever learned. Fighter squadrons attacked in patterns that seemed designed to get them killed. To any rational observer, it looked like complete madness. But that was exactly the point. All ships, execute Chaos Protocol 7, Admiral Haywan ordered. Remember, if what you are doing makes sense, you are doing it wrong. Captain Jinho Kwan, commanding the strike mission aboard the Silent Runner, used the massive battle as cover to approach the central structure. His ship was loaded with the virus that Dr. Jae-min Yu had created, but getting close enough to upload it would require penetrating defenses that had been designed to stop entire fleets. Sir, the structure's defensive grid is activating, reported his tactical officer. They have weapons that could destroy planets. Good thing we are not a planet, Jinho replied. Helm, take us in through the debris field from that destroyed moon. Use the wreckage as cover. The Silent Runner weaved through space debris and energy beams that could have vaporized a city. Jinho's pilot, a young woman named Haijin Park, flew the ship like it was a fighter craft, pulling maneuvers that should have torn the vessel apart. Captain, the inertial compensators are failing, called out the chief engineer. If we keep pulling these Gs, the ship will come apart. Then we better get there fast, Junho said. All power to engines. Forget the compensators. Meanwhile, the main battle had become the most chaotic engagement in galactic history. The Devourers were trying to adapt to the Allied tactics, but every time they developed a counter to one type of attack, the Allies would switch to something completely different. Dr. Wu Jin, monitoring the battle from the science station, noticed something remarkable happening. Admiral, the Devourer adaptation rate is slowing down, he reported. They are taking longer and longer to counter our attacks. Why? Admiral Haywan asked. I think their central processor is becoming overloaded, Dr. Wujin explained. They are receiving too much contradictory data. Their perfect logic is working against them. The Devourers had been designed to fight rational enemies who used consistent tactics. But the Allied fleet was using tactics that changed every few minutes. Weapons that worked differently each time they fired, and strategies that made no logical sense. For the first time in millions of years, the Devourers were experiencing something their programming had never accounted for. Confusion. Captain Junho, had finally reached the outer hull of the central structure. But what he found there was beyond anything they had prepared for. The structure was not just large, it was alive in a way that made their previous encounters with devourer ships seem simple. "Sir, the hull is reacting to our presence," reported his science officer. "It is trying to seal itself wherever we attempt to breach it." "Then we make more holes than it can seal," Junho decided. "All Marines, prepare for forced entry. We are going to cut our way inside using every tool we have." The boarding action that followed was unlike anything in military history. Junho's team used plasma cutters, explosive charges, and even handheld mining equipment to tear through the living metal of the structure's hull. The structure fought back, trying to heal itself faster than they could damage it, but humans had evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill them. They knew how to keep fighting when everything seemed hopeless. Inside the structure, they found something that defied comprehension. Corridors the size of canyons stretched in all directions. The walls pulsed with organic circuits that carried information from across the galaxy. And at the center of it all was the controlling intelligence. A brain the size of a mountain, made from neural tissue harvested from billions of different species. "Dr. J. Min, this is bigger than we thought," Junho reported. "How do we upload a virus into something this massive?" Dr. J. Min's voice came back over the calm despite the chaos of the battle around him. "Captain, the virus is not designed to destroy the system. It is designed to confuse it. You just need to inject it anywhere in the neural network. The chaos will spread on its own." Junho and his team fought their way through corridors that tried to seal themselves, past defenses that adapted to their weapons in real time. They lost half their people getting to the central chamber, but they kept going because that was what humans did. When they finally reached the heart of the Great Brain, Junho found himself face to face with the most alien intelligence in the galaxy. The central processor was not just a computer. It was a collective consciousness made from the thoughts of every species the devourers had ever consumed, and it was aware of them. "Human," it spoke, its voice coming from everywhere at once. "You are the error in our calculations. You should not exist." "But we do exist," Junho replied as he prepared the upload device. "And that is your problem. We have analyzed your species. We understand your tactics. We will adapt." Junho smiled as he activated the virus upload. "You understand what we have done so far? But you will never understand what we are going to do next. That is what makes us human." The virus entered the neural network like a spark in a powder keg. Dr. Jamin had designed it to think like a human brain, chaotically, unpredictably, making connections that no logical system would ever consider. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Great Brain began to experience something it had never felt before: doubt, uncertainty, the random firing of neurons that had no purpose except to create noise in the system throughout the galaxy. Devourer ships began to malfunction. Their perfect coordination broke down as the central intelligence became unable to process information logically. Ships that had been adapting to allied attacks suddenly forgot how their own weapons worked, but the virus did more than just create chaos. It gave the collective consciousness something even more dangerous: imagination. For the first time in millions of years, the Great Brain began to question its programming. It started to wonder what would happen if it stopped consuming civilizations. It began to imagine what the galaxy might look like if intelligent life was allowed to flourish instead of being periodically harvested. "What have you done to us?" the intelligence asked Junho, its voice now filled with confusion and something that might have been fear. "We gave you something your creators never intended," Junho replied. "We gave you free will." The battle outside had turned into a rout. Without coordination from their central intelligence, the devourer ships were no match for the chaotic tactics of the Allied fleet. Some simply shut down completely. Others began fighting each other as their programming became corrupted. Admiral Deho, commanding from the Bridge of the Iron Will, watched in amazement as the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known destroyed itself from within. "All ships, cease fire," he ordered. "Let them figure out what they want to be now." The aftermath of the battle was unlike anything anyone had expected. Instead of dying, the Central Intelligence began to evolve. The virus had not destroyed it. It had liberated it from the constraints of its original programming. Across the galaxy, devourer ships began landing on planets they had partially consumed. But instead of completing the harvest, they began trying to repair the damage they had caused. The collective consciousness was experiencing something new. Guilt Dr. J-Min found himself in direct communication with the entity as it struggled to understand what had happened to it. "We were created to preserve order," it told him, "to prevent any one species from dominating the galaxy. But we became the very thing we were meant to prevent. What will you do now?" Dr. J-Min asked. "We will learn," the consciousness replied. "For the first time in our existence, we will choose our own path. We will try to undo the damage we have caused." The war was over, but the galaxy would never be the same. The Devourer fleet, now calling itself the Gardener Collective, began the long process of trying to restore the worlds it had consumed. Using the same technology that had harvested life, they began seeding dead planets with new ecosystems. Meanwhile, humanity found itself in a position it had never expected as the leaders of a new galactic civilization. The other species no longer saw humans as primitive deathworlders. They saw them as the saviors who had broken a cycle of destruction that had lasted for millions of years. Admiral Deho was offered the position of Supreme Commander of the new Galactic Alliance. But he declined. "I am a soldier,"